I'm going to be reading Paper Wishes, and the chapter is September. In the previous chapter, they had just had their lantern ceremony, and it ends with her feeling quite sad that Eugen's lantern, the flame went out, and that was her hope for contacting Eugen. As soon as I hear that Miss Rosalie has returned, I run to school. It takes me a while to figure out which is her new classroom, but I peek in windows until I see a familiar stack of books on a table. Miss Rosalie is not there, but I go inside the building and slide a painting of lanterns spilling across the ground under her classroom door. I think she will like this painting. Father joins us at dinner. When Mother sits and I have poured tea for everyone, we all look at Father. He pulls an envelope from his pocket. "A letter from Keiko," he says. Mother reads the letter. She starts to speak, but then stops and hands the letter to Grandfather. Grandfather waves his hand to Ron, and Mother gives the letter to Ron instead. Ron scans the letter up and down. "Keiko writes that Professor Green has held my place," Ron says. I am glad Ron does not keep secrets like Mother and Father. "He can try to get a pass for me to attend college again," Ron says. Grandfather forms his hands into a steeple. "You must go," Father says. "Father," Ron says, "I will think about this. For you, I will think about this. And I will write to ask Professor Green to tell me more about the pass. But I cannot promise to go. It is not my wish to leave my family in this place." "You must," Father says. No one speaks for a few minutes, and then Father hits his palm against the table and stands. After a minute, he walks outside. I'm noticing that this family, they don't communicate in a lot of words to each other. They kind of say little, and that's meant to carry a lot of weight. After Father leaves, we eat our dinner in silence. I am not hungry anymore, but it is easier to eat my food than to listen to Mother tell me why I must eat my food. "What do you think, Mother?" Ron asks. "I don't know what's right," Mother says. "The army, that was wrong, but college, that is not wrong, only difficult." "Difficult for me as well," Ron says. "To leave you in this place, I don't think I can do it." "Children leave their parents, my son," Mother says. Ron lowers his voice, but I lean closer to hear. "What about Manami?" he asks. "It isn't fair that she must stay here and I can go. I don't think I can leave her either." Mother looks at me. "We will discuss this later," she says. Ron turns toward me. "You are a good listener, little sister, but sometimes you should not listen." He then squeezes my hand. "It is time to walk home," Grandfather says. That night, when I lay in my bed, I remember that Ron did not mention Miss Rosalie's return. I wonder if he knows. It's hard for me to imagine that he doesn't. In this prison village, everyone knows everything. I walked to Miss Rosalie's classroom again the next day, this time with a newspaper flower. I saved it from the night of the lanterns. It's not colorful, but the petals curl under and swirl around each other. Miss Rosalie is outside, sweeping the steps. "Oh, Manami," she says when she sees me, "my darling girl." She leans the broom against the building and hurries to meet me. "I'm teaching your class again. Isn't that the best news?" I nod and hold my paper flower for her to see. Miss Rosalie brings the flower to her nose. "It's so pretty, I can almost smell roses," she says. Then she puts her arm around my shoulders. "Thank you for the beautiful painting," she says. "That was your painting, wasn't it? When I was here last, you only made drawings. Now paintings too, and so beautiful." Miss Rosalie talks on and on. She doesn't wait for me to respond, but just jumps from one subject to the next. "I've made a new curtain," she says. "Just wait until you see it. I was tempted to make it white, but I chose light pink instead, and I made a yellow one for your brother." For the rest of the morning, I help Miss Rosalie clean desks and chairs. We hang the curtain, sweep the floor, and wash the window. By the time I leave to join Grandfather for lunch, Miss Rosalie's new classroom is sparkling. Come back tomorrow if you can, Miss Rosalie says. We can tackle your brother's classroom. At dinner that evening, Grandfather says, school will start soon. We really don't have enough books still, Ron says, but we will get by. I can organize my classroom this weekend so that I am ready when school begins on Monday. Manami has been helping her teacher today, Grandfather says. Ron smiles. I heard something about that, he says. I think about the surprise Miss Rosalie and I have planned for him. I can't wait for tomorrow. The next morning, I watch as Mother takes out her teapot. I watch as she takes out a cup and a tray, and I watch as she sets the teapot on the tray and the cup next to it. I thought you might like to take tea to your teacher, she says. She hands me the new tea tin left over from the lantern celebration, and I pour tea leaves into the teapot. Together, Mother and I walk to the mess hall. She boils water, and I pour it over the tea leaves. I carry the heavy tray to the school building and inside to Miss Rosalie's classroom. I set it down on her desk. Steam rises from the teapot as I pour a stream of tea into the cup. She takes a sip and smiles. Ooh, perfect, she says. Then she takes a cup from inside her desk and pours tea into it. She hands me the cup. We drink our tea in silence. Miss Rosalie smiles and looks out the window. Ron's classroom is in the same block as Miss Rosalie's. It is not in the same barracks anymore, though. Now it is in the barracks next door. While we clean Ron's classroom, Miss Rosalie tells me about the new books she has brought. 2 volumes of poetry. She tells me about the new box of paints she has brought. 6 different colors. She tells me about the calico kitten she has brought. Annabelle Lee. Miss Rosalie laughs when she tells me about her kitten. While she was staying with her aunt and uncle, the kitten appeared on the doorstep out of nowhere. Like the dogs, I think. Of course I kept her, Miss Rosalie says. Anyone would have kept her. Loud clanging from the mess hall interrupts us. Hurry off to your lunch, Miss Rosalie says. I'll finish up here. Your brother is going to be very surprised, don't you think? I look around Ron's classroom. It is neat and tidy, a curtain hanging in the window. Maybe he will be surprised. Maybe he will be something else too. Maybe he will be happy. Happy that I helped clean and organize his classroom. Happy that Miss Rosalie made him a yellow curtain. I put the cup and teapot on the tray and carry it to the mess hall. After lunch, Mother tells me to rest. Grandfather says that means I must take a nap. But today I am not tired, so I lie on my bed with my paper and pencils. Ron does not join us for dinner that evening. After we eat, Mother gives me a bowl of vegetables and noodles and chicken that is covered with a cloth. Perhaps he is working in his classroom, she says. If he is not, set it on the table at home. I take the bowl to Ron's classroom. On my way there, I see the wild boys playing baseball. They cackle and growl at each other, chasing around the diamond Ron made for them. Today there is a dog barking after them that is just as wild as they are. I wonder where that dog came from. I wonder what will happen to these wild boys if Ron returns to college. I wonder if their next teacher, will buy them a bat, glove, and ball. I wonder what will happen to me if Ron returns to college. I would miss him so much. The door to Ron's classroom is closed, but not pulled tight. I push it, and it swings open without a sound. I hear Ron's voice, but not his words. I step into the doorway of Ron's classroom, and I look down. I don't want to interrupt. I cannot, Ron says. His voice is sad. It is certain. It is a little bit angry. I look up, and my heart stops beating. It is my brother. His arms around Miss Rosalie. But not the same way he puts his arms around me, and Miss Rosalie's arms around Ron, but not the same way she puts her arms around me. Their heads tilt toward each other. Their faces shine damply in the dim light. I must make some kind of noise because they both turn around to see me at the same moment. My heart begins to beat again, and I feel shame stain my cheeks red. I wish I had run away before they saw me. They jump apart, and then I look down. I do not want to see shame stain their cheeks red like mine. I set the bowl of noodles and vegetables and chicken on the desk closest to me and turn to leave. Manami, Ron calls. I do not want to hear what Ron wants to tell me. I do not want to be a good listener, so I walk out past the door. I start to run. I run past the wild boys. I run past the mess hall where Mother is still cleaning. And when I reach the steps in front of our barracks, I stop. I stand still until I feel so calm that Grandfather won't notice that I'm upset. And then I walk inside past the table where he sits to my bed, where I also sit. Our room is the only place I can hide. Ron will not talk to me in front of the others. I think about Ron and Miss Rosalie. Ron, who tells me secrets, but not this one. Miss Rosalie, who tells me stories, but not this one. I wonder what other secrets I do not know. Just before school starts, sickness begins to pass from one barracks to another. Rest, Mother tells me before she leaves for her shift at the mess hall. Eat, Father tells me before he leaves for his work crew. But resting and eating won't help. I am too sick to start school with the other children. Ron says nothing before he leaves for his classroom in the morning, but he pats my arm. The sickness passing from barracks to barracks brings coughing and sneezing. It is mostly grandmothers and grandfathers who lie in bed, but what I feel is not in my lungs or in my nose. It is in my heart and in my head. The sickness I feel has been growing larger and larger since I learned the secret between Ron and Miss Rosalie. So that right there, that sentence lets me know that she's not sick with the flu. She's just sick with, I don't know, feeling bad, sad about Ron and Miss Rosalie, surprised. Let's wait and see how she feels. As the sickness grows larger, my throat shrinks smaller and smaller. Not only do words not pass through my throat, but food cannot pass through either. Mother makes broth in the kitchen and Grandfather spoons it into my mouth. Twice each day I hear the chitter of my classmates as they walk to and from school. I wonder if the seat next to Kimi is taken by someone new, or if the seat is waiting for me. I wonder if Miss Rosalie is waiting for me. When I think about Miss Rosalie, my stomach flips and my throat squeezes. So I think of the dogs that now roam the paths of this prison village. I try to count them. 1 with Kimi, 1 by the mess hall, 2 with the cows, 1 with the wild boys, perhaps even more since I've been sick. I worry that other dogs will find the rest of the drawings, that there will be none left for Eugen. How will he find me? So interesting how her unrest and all these changes and her concerns and fears, they really affect her physically, so that she can't talk, and now so that she can't even eat. And this is true for a lot of us. Sometimes when we are going through a time that's really emotional and hard, it affects us. We don't want to eat. You've maybe felt like this, like you're so excited you can't eat, or you're just so sad or lonely that you're just not hungry, or maybe you're really hungry, or maybe you're just so tired. How we feel emotionally does affect how we feel physically too, and so we have to protect ourselves. We have to feel it, but we have to also learn how to deal with it. Mother and Father and Grandfather and Ron whisper when they think I am asleep. Something must be done, Father says. She is not getting better, Ron says. I think she is getting worse, Grandfather says. I will take her to the doctor, Mother says. The next morning, Mother takes me to the hospital. It is far away, as far as it could be in this prison village. It is behind Block 29, close to the cemetery. A big truck stops at our barracks, just like the day we left the island. A soldier sits in the back with Mother and me, just like the day we left the island. And the truck takes us to the hospital. So it must be far enough away. This village must be huge. So it's far enough away that you don't necessarily want to walk there. You actually get in a truck. On the outside, the hospital looks like every other building there. On the inside, it is wide open and filled with beds and curtains that separate the beds from one another. Mother speaks to a nurse, and the nurse directs us to a bed. I am tired from the trip, so I lie down. The nurse pulls the curtain closed and checks me. Then the doctor checks me. I don't know what is wrong with her, the doctor says. Maybe it is this harsh climate, too hot, too windy, too dry. We can keep her here if you need to work. I will take her home, Mother says. I overhear Mother and Grandfather talk about me. They say words like sorrow and heart sickness, but I cannot tell them Ron's secret. I will not write it down. So they're beginning to recognize that it's not a physical thing, but they use the word sorrow and heart sickness, that maybe this is why Manami is feeling so bad. One day after school, Mother brings Kimi to my bed. Kimi sits on the chair beside me. Can you sit up, she asks. I'll brush your hair. Mother helps me sit and then leaves us alone. While Kimi brushes my hair, she tells me about school. Miss Rosalie and I are saving your seat, she says. She tells me about her dog. Coco cries like a baby when my mother leaves her alone for 2 seconds, she says. Then she sits on the other side of my bed, her legs crossed in front of her. She tells me rumors about the Wild Boys and complains about this morning's breakfast. She recites a poem she learned for school and whispers news of the war that sent us to this prison village. Mother brings us thinly sliced apples from the orchard. They smell so good. I pick one up and take a tiny bite off. My throat is open enough for me to swallow, and I am hungry for more apples. Since I have been sick, my family is together again. Father does not spend his evenings with the other fathers. He spends them in our room with us. Ron does too. I notice that they do not speak to each other, but at least they are in the same room. So why do you think Ron and his father are not speaking? What has happened earlier that would make them clash? During dinner, Mother must have told Father about Kimi's visit that day, and when he returns from the mess hall, he smooths my forehead with his big rough hand. You ate some apples, he is smiling. Mother is in the mess hall finishing her shift. Father sits at the table holding a block of wood and a knife. Grandfather sits near the window watching the night. I hear a tapping at the door, and Ron opens it and says, I have brought Manami's teacher. She wishes to see Manami. Father stands, placing the knife and wood at the table. Welcome, Father says to Miss Rosalie. Father, Ron, and Miss Rosalie stare at each other. At the same time, Grandfather stands and Mother returns. Mother, you remember Manami's teacher, Ron says. Welcome, Mother says. You are kind to come. Thank you, says Miss Rosalie. I have been worried about Manami. I would like to close my eyes and pretend to sleep, but Ron saw that I was awake when he first entered. I do not like to keep secrets like Father and Mother do, not even secrets from Ron, who does not keep secrets either, especially not secrets from Mother, who makes me broth, or Grandfather, who finds me paint, or Father, who makes me a fan. Please sit, Mother tells Miss Rosalie. Miss Rosalie sits, Ron sits, Grandfather sits, Father hovers. Mother brings a plate of crunchy cookies and pours glasses of water. Manami is sorry she has not returned to school, Grandfather says. I know she has been sick, Miss Rosalie says. Many are sick now. With Manami, it is something different, Grandfather says. I see, says Miss Rosalie. Ron and Miss Rosalie look at each other for a moment. From across the room, I can see that their secret will not stay a secret for much longer. Ron rises from his chair and stands behind Miss Rosalie. He puts his hand on her shoulders. I want you to know, Ron says, Rosalie is more than just Manami's teacher. For a moment, no one moves. Then Father huffs and leaves the room. Mother closes her eyes and sets her glass on the table. Grandfather leans back in his chair, but I cannot see his face. May I speak to Manami? Miss Rosalie asks. I close my eyes. I hear a chair scrape across the floor. Hello, Manami, Miss Rosalie says. I open my eyes. I do not want to, but I also do not want to hurt Miss Rosalie's feelings. But I cannot look at her, so I look at my hands instead. I have been worried about you, she says. The classroom feels empty without you, she says. And my kitten is eager to meet you, she says. I have read nearly half of one of the new poetry books, she says. The walls of the classroom are covered with colorful paintings made by your classmates, she says. And then she says nothing for a while. I think she must be ready to leave, so I look up. Miss Rosalie's face is close to mine, and our eyes meet. miss you, she says. Please come back. I nod. Miss Rosalie presses my hand and then stands. The next morning I return to school. I walk with Ron. He tells me about the new baseball team. It is a team full of wild boys. He tells me about the student newspaper. His students are clever. He tells me about Miss Rosalie's kitten, which escaped from its basket in her classroom and wandered all over the building. And then he stops walking. He crouches low to see my eyes, like Miss Rosalie. So remember, he doesn't normally do this. Like, he doesn't need to see her eyes, but this time he must have something important to say. You love your teacher, he says. I love Miss Rosalie. Perhaps you understand how I can love her too. And he is right. I can understand. I do understand. But I remember Father's words from last night. Forbidden, he said. Wrong, he said. I remember Mother's words too. Dangerous, she said. Impossible, she said. I also remember Grandfather's words. Beautiful, he said. Love, he said. And this is the same word Ron says to me. Love. I want you to think, why does Dad say that Miss Rosalie and Ron are forbidden and wrong? Why does Mother say that them being together is dangerous and impossible? And why do you think Grandfather says it's beautiful and love? Can you understand how Miss Rosalie might love me too? Ron asks. Yes, but forbidden, dangerous. I understand these words too, and I am afraid for my brother. Kimi is so happy to see me that she jumps up and down and squeals. She hugs me and spins me in a circle. You're back! Other children gather around. They smile and say hello. Even Rio shouts, hey, Manami is back. When Miss Rosalie sees me in line during the pledge and song in the schoolyard, she hurries over. Thank you for coming, she says. Kimi is behind me, Miss Rosalie is beside me, and Ron is across the way. And I am happy to be at school. Please look at the discussion questions that are posted below this video and answer them.